Hey, nature photographers. I'm coming to you from an interesting location today. It probably doesn't look like my normal setup, and that's because it's not. I'm here in my hotel room in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, as I prepare for over a month-long period of photography workshops. So I'm excited to be coming to you from here, but let's be honest, getting lighting and everything set up in a portable way in a hotel room isn't the easiest. So I hope you'll bear with me if things aren't quite what they normally are like. But what I want to do for you today is tell you that on any given landscape and wildlife photography trip, excursion, workshop, wherever I'm going, even if it's for a day, what are my 3 must-have lenses with me? I own a bunch. I think, almost all the pro lenses. I don't have some of those that are like mainly for portrait photography and things like that. But if I had to pick 3 that go with me all the time, and these 3 go with me all the time, what are those 3 lenses going to be? Hey, nature photographers. I'm Lee Hoy, OM System Ambassador, photography workshop instructor for Wildside Nature Tours and Precision Camera and Video, and contributing author for the Journal of Wildlife Photography. Here we go. Well, when it comes to landscape photography excursions, we want to start thinking about the wide angle end of lenses first. What are the lenses that we have an opportunity to choose from? Well, you've got your 8mm 1.8, the fisheye lens, the Pro. That is a phenomenal lens. I love that lens. It has great uses for landscape, night sky. I mean, with that 1.8 aperture, it's really primo for shooting night sky, super wide angle fisheye. Beautiful lens, great build quality. We can consider the H25mm f4.0. I love it. It handles sun flare a little better than, say, the 714, which I'll talk about. And for me, the H25, the fact that I can put circular lenses on the end of it, I love that. I wish it were 2.8, but being f4.0 isn't that big a deal. I have other lenses that if I'm doing night sky photography will generally go out with me. But so you can choose from the H25 f4.0. You've got the 7-14mm 2.8 that I've already mentioned, and that is such a great quality lens. I love it. I love the range of that zoom. I love its purposes. I love the quality, edge-to-edge sharpness. The downside about that lens is with that bulbous end, you can't use just normal screw-on filters. But that's okay because companies like Nisi, they make special filter adapters that allow you to use slide-in filters. So if you're thinking about filters, you still have options. Yes, it costs you a little more money, and it's not quite as convenient as circular screw-on filters. But that lens is super fast, 2.8. It's an absolute crusher in night sky photography with the focal range of 7-14, and we all know that for weight, all of these lenses are pretty light. Of course, you've got some fixed lenses. You have like the 12mm 2.0. That's not a pro lens, but it's super small, super compact. It gets great quality. I like using that for night sky photography as well. So those are some of the lenses. You've got 17 1.8. I'm really a big fan of zooms. I like being able to cover a broader range. So while I own several fixed focal length lenses, I don't tend to use them quite as much. Now there's also the 12-40mm 2.8. There's the version 2 out now. That is such a versatile lens. And when you look at the H25 f4, the 12-40 with 2.8, okay, so you can do a little better night sky with that, but you don't quite have the same range on the wide angle end that you do with the H25, right? And then there's the 12-45mm, and those are all great lenses. They all produce excellent image quality. Don't have any issues with any of them, and I own most of those lenses. But when it comes to, if I have to pick one out of that category, let's open my trusty Think Tank airport bag, and we're going to take a look here because this is the lens that I'm going to choose to take out with me all the time if I'm doing landscaping. Yep, that's the H25 f4.0. I love shooting into the sun. I love shooting into the sun for landscapes. Well, this handles sun flare a bit better than the bulbous end of the 7-14. If this were a 2.8 that took circular filters, it would be absolutely perfect. If I were going to rate it, I'd give it a 9.8. And the only reason I might not give it a 10 is I'd love that 2.8 end so I could do night sky as well as the circular filters. You can see I have a Nisi polarizer screwed on right now. I tend to leave that on this lens unless I'm out somewhere where I'm not going to be needing it at all. I'll take it off. I do use the lens hood some, but I also like to do some things where I don't keep it on there all the time. And inevitably in my travels as I head around, sometimes I just leave it in another bag or something. So this is my go-to landscape lens, the H25 f4.0. It's small, compact, easy to use at all angles. If I am doing extended length shutter speeds, I do put it on my trusty Photo Pro E6L tripod, and I'll have the link to that particular tripod down below, as well as Nisi filters. You can take a look at this lens, and I guarantee you will not be unhappy with it. Now, of course, 35mm equivalent in an H25, that's giving us a 16 to 50, okay? So I'm basically out shooting at 16 to 50 millimeters, 35mm equivalent. I love it. It has the LFN button on the lens. My general programming of that button is to allow me to change autofocus point configuration. So the H25 is one of my 3 for sure lenses. Now, let's jump into that mid-range, and I suppose we could argue that 12 to 40s and 12 to 45s belong in that mid-range, but for me, because I do a lot of wildlife as well as landscape, I'm also kind of looking at a little longer focal length. And when it gets to that, you know, for me, there's a couple of lenses that fall into that category. There's the 40 to 150, which comes in both a 2.8 and a 4.0. Now, we all say we like faster lenses, okay? And of course, they're more expensive, they're generally a little heavier, and they're a little bigger. And there's the 40 to 150 2.8 and there's the 4.0. I own the 2.8. I don't own the 4.0 because I really don't need to have 2 lenses with the same focal length when I already have the faster one. But, you know, so I'm also going to throw the 100 to 400 in there. Yes, that has a much longer reach on the back end, but the front end is, there's a little overlap, but it really belongs in the super telephoto category. So, you know, basically when I'm looking at that mid-range, for me, the 40 to 150s are the 2 lenses that I'm going to take into consideration. If you push me hard, you know, I have in my bag, so my second always go-to lens is the 40 to 150 2.8. And this is one of the best lenses I've owned. If you don't ever have a need to put a teleconverter on this, like the MC14, which is a 1.4, the MC20 2.0, then the 4.0 would be just fine for you. But here's a reason to consider having the 2.8 over the 4.0. And yes, it's a little bigger. Yes, it costs a little bit more, but here's why. In the Galapagos Islands on a workshop, before the 150 to 400 came out, I had the 40 to 150, and I carried a 1.4 teleconverter and a 2.0 teleconverter, and I had my 300 f4. And on day 3 of the workshop, I broke the 300. Well, by having the doubler on the 40 to 150 2.8, I could shoot still at 600 f4. And in the Galapagos, where a lot of birds are close, it's not that big a deal, and I didn't really miss a single shot by not having a 300 and having a doubler on this. So if you have another long lens in your bag and you have the 40 to 150 2.8, if something ever happens to your longer lens and you've traveled somewhere expensive, you've been saving up a lifelong trip, well, you're not completely screwed, right? That's a good thing to keep in mind when it comes to which of these 2 lenses to choose. You're going to love the quality of both. So that's the consideration on the 2.8. Would you like to add a teleconverter? Because if you're a birder and you're elderly or you've got issues where you can't carry much weight, having this with a doubler is an outstanding combination. You will read people on Facebook. You know, I always talk about the Facebook gurus, the experts when it comes to social media photography. And again, if you go look at a lot of times, if you go look at their images suck. So be sure, if you're really going to take someone's advice, you should click on their profile and go take a look at their images. If the images don't match up with what they're saying, maybe that's not a good person to trust. Okay? My guess is they put a doubler on here. They shoot a tiny bird 100 feet away. They crop the ever-loving crap out of the image, and then they complain about the quality. Well, I see that happen all the time with all focal lengths, and it's because people just don't understand, A, the physics of photography. They don't understand the limitations of photography. They don't have good field craft, which is about how you get close to your subjects. And so they try to make up for it in cropping the crap out of images. And I've said many times before, I crop very few of my images. I don't need to. I work on field craft. I work on approaching subjects. I work on letting subjects approach me. Okay, so that's not something I need to consider. I don't need 50 megapixels so I can crop it down to 20 and then brag about my shot. Probably stepped on some toes. Don't care. And I'm not saying you should never do that. I don't care if that's what you do. But if you do that and then you gripe about the quality of your images, it's sort of stupid. This lens should belong in your bag if you're a wildlife photographer. Africa, perfect lens for large mammals to get environmental shots. The toughness of this lens, the quality of this lens, it should belong in any serious wildlife photographer's lens. But that's not all. I love doing long lens panoramics in landscape and long lens landscapes. And this lens is incredible. I can handhold this at pretty slow shutter speeds. I have been known to do 20 plus image long lens landscape panoramics with high res mode. So I'll take the picture, click, let it record, move over, click, click, to where you get some absolutely massive files. This is a bomb lens for that. You cannot go wrong. You know, when I live out near Big Bend National Park in West Texas, and the landscapes are so big, you often think of grabbing a wide angle lens. Well, you know, when you use a wide angle lens, unless your mountains are close and you look at your image, a wide angle lens pushes everything away, and so you get these little pissant mountains that aren't very impressive. But if you use a medium telephoto lens, you bring the landscape, you take your viewer into the scene. This is perfect for that. 12 to 40 is pretty good too. This right here is my bomb for that though. Perfect for long lens landscape. Well, it probably won't come to you as a huge surprise on what my third lens is going to be, but let's talk about the Super Telephoto lens end, okay? You have several incredible options. Now, on the beginner level is the 100 to 400. And I don't own that. I don't need it. It's a little slow for my taste for wildlife photography, but you can get great image quality with it. I need you to know, the autofocus, no, it's not going to perform like the 150 to 400. It's not going to perform like the 40 to 150, okay? It's not a pro lens. And that's a key element. People buy that lens expecting it to perform like lenses that cost 5, 6, 7 times that. It won't. Is it a bad lens? No, it's not a bad lens, okay? It's limited on the image stabilization. It is not quite as responsive on the autofocus, but I have seen folks post outstanding images with that lens, okay? So it's definitely a contender for this, particularly based on your budget. Not everybody spends obscene amounts of money on camera gear and you know, makes that their number one priority, and I get that. So we've got the 100 to 400 zoom. You've got the 300 4.0 prime, which I love so much I own 2 of them. And it pains me not to have that in my bag. I mean, that is a phenomenal lens. I used it regularly with the 1.4. I use it fairly often with the 2.0. Again, great image quality. If you see people complaining about that combination and saying it's just not sharp, I guarantee their shutter speeds are not fast enough. They're cropping the crap out of their images. They're doing all the things you shouldn't do in order to have a sharp shot, okay? I see. How do I know this? Because it happens time and time again with clients in the field, with people emailing me, Lee, my images aren't sharp, and I'm looking, okay, what's your focal length? 800. What's your shutter speed? 1/500th. Well, the image stabilization, well, you're 75 years old. You know, you're probably not quite as sturdy as you once were, okay? So, yeah, there's a lot of issues I see out there, and I see that with younger people too who think they can get away with too slow a shutter speed. Well, obviously the next contender, and what you're going to find in my bag, is the 150 to 400. There simply hasn't been another lens made like it. The Sony folks, the Canon folks, Nikon, they can tell me about what they think's equivalent, and in fact, there's just not. You can't focus as close. You know, the fact it's not a push-pull zoom, it's an internal zoom. The image quality, the image stabilization, I don't care what lenses you own, but if you're an OM system shooter and you can afford it, and again, 7,500 sounds like a lot, but it's not when you compare it to other lenses of equal quality. Do not give me your 200, 800 and how it's cheap. Yeah, it's like the 100 to 400. That's what you compare that to. You don't compare it to this lens. So haters gonna hate, don't care. Leave your ugly little comments below. I might leave them, might delete them. This lens with the built-in 1.25 teleconverter, right? Where you can set, you can switch the switch on the side and have a preset focus distance. So if you're ever tracking a subject too close and it gets blurry and you're having trouble trying to get focus going, you just have pre-focused on something further out. You set that focus, press your black button up here on the lens and it goes right back out to whatever distance you set it, and you can pick up subjects again. I love this lens. It's on my camera all the time if I'm anticipating any wildlife photography at all. So I hope that this particular setup, you'll understand, these are my 3 go-to lenses. I own a lot more, macro, night sky, but if I'm generally going out for landscape and wildlife, these 3 lenses are what you'll always find in my bag. Now, before you go, don't turn off because there's something I want you to know. You may not realize that I offer OM system only photography workshops. While I offer some workshops that combine, that it doesn't matter what camera system you use, why am I offering OM system only workshops? Because we can go more in depth in the menus, we can go more in depth in the computational photography features, we can go more in depth on the specific settings that you should be using for different genres of photography. So the link is going to be down below. Hop down there, click on it. It'll take you to the Wildside Nature Tours website and take a look. Several of them have filled up, but I do have some spaces and I'm always going to be adding more. Hint, watch for 2025 Mastering Bird in Flight Photography, OM only, up in Alaska, Pribilof Islands, Seward and Anchorage area. Hope this video was helpful. If it helps you make some decisions on which lens to purchase, those are the ones that are in my Think Tank Airport Roller Derby 2. Y'all have a good day.